Some mornings unfold like a slow-moving postcard from a life well lived. I wake before the sun, ease stiff knees into my favorite rocking chair, and wrap my fingers, worn and weathered from years of work, around a chipped mug that still bears the name of a long-shuttered diner I once loved during college. Behind my home, the lake rests silver-gray and still, a perfect mirror for the calm I've earned after decades spent chasing deadlines, raising children, and watching the world whirl faster than anyone ever warned. On those hushed mornings, the only sounds are the distant warble of a meadowlark and the soft creak of the dock settling into its pilings, gentle reminders that, for once, time is on my side. It was during one of those quiet, hard-earned mornings that the peace shattered. I had just taken a second sip of coffee when a shrill, furious screech tore through the air. Karen Henderson, Queen Bee of Pine Ridge, self-declared enforcer of all things petty and protector of property values, was screaming herself hoarse from the other side of my brand-new privacy wall. The 12-foot monument of treated cedar and reinforced concrete stood proudly between us, obliterating her million-dollar lake view in the same elegant stroke that preserved mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how Pine Ridge's most notorious HOA president learned that sometimes, karma shows up wearing a hard hat and carrying blueprints. When I bought my modest 3-bedroom ranch on Lakeside Drive, I believed I'd finally found peace. The backyard opened directly onto Crystal Lake, complete with a private dock and beach, lovingly maintained by the previous owners for over 30 years. During my walkthrough, neighbors waved from pristine lawns, and everything seemed serene. All except for the woman watching me from across the cul-de-sac, Karen Henderson, ensconced in a flashy 5,000-square-foot McMansion perched atop a gentle rise. She had a sweeping view of the lake, but no direct access to it. The developer, in their infinite wisdom, had placed her lot just far enough back that she'd need to either cut across my yard or walk half a mile to reach the public beach. For the first few months, life was bliss. I grilled burgers on weekends, paddled around in my kayak, and soaked in the silence I'd worked 20 years in corporate accounting to afford. Then came the knock. It was a Saturday morning. Karen stood at my door in designer athleisure, clipboard in hand, her smile tight across freshly Botoxed skin. She introduced herself as the HOA president and rattled off a series of supposed violations. My kayak rack was 2 inches too close to the property line. My patio furniture wasn't from an approved vendor list. Even the wildflowers in my front yard, native and low maintenance, allegedly violated subsection 12.4 of the landscaping code. I nodded, made the changes, and, foolishly, thought that would be the end of it. How wrong I was. Soon, strangers began wandering through my backyard, lounging on my dock, and snapping photos like they owned the place. When I finally confronted a couple, they sheepishly showed me an online listing. The Henderson Lakeside Retreat, private dock access. There it was, my dock, my kayak, my beach, being used to advertise Karen's illegal vacation rental for $300 a night. Furious, I marched across the street and found her power washing her driveway. She didn't flinch. With a tilt of her head and a syrupy tone, she explained that the lake view was a shared neighborhood asset meant to enhance property values. She warned that if I blocked access, she could invoke the Neighborhood Harmony Clause. Then she smiled and suggested I be grateful her high-quality guests were elevating the community. That evening, while others watched game shows and sipped wine, I dug into the HOA bylaws like I used to dissect spreadsheets. To my delight, I found several gems. Homeowners retained the right to build privacy structures within height and material restrictions. Better yet, a grandfather clause protected property rights established before the HOA existed. Karen's threats were as hollow as her listings were illegal. The next morning, I called Derek, my old college buddy turned property law shark. He couldn't stop laughing. Trespassing, misrepresentation, fraudulent advertising. Karen was practically begging for a lawsuit. But Derek had a better idea: poetic justice. And so began our quiet, methodical 2-week operation, more detailed than any audit I'd ever run. I hired a surveyor, pulled permits, and contracted a crew known for fast, high-quality builds. We brought in an architect to design a wall that checked every HOA box: 12 feet tall, approved materials, a neutral palette, and maximized obstruction of Karen's precious view. It was, quite frankly, a masterpiece of malicious compliance. Memorial Day weekend arrived, Karen's favorite time to host the annual HOA barbecue. At 7 a.m. sharp on Saturday, construction trucks rolled in. By noon, the posts were set. By sunset, the frame was complete. Sunday morning brought cedar planks. By Sunday evening, the wall stood tall, a towering tribute to doing things by the book. As I cracked open a beer and admired the finished work, a scream split the air. Karen stormed across the street, dragging confused party guests in her wake. Her face shifted between rage and panic. She threatened lawsuits, city fines, and community retaliation. I handed her a folder. Inside, every permit, the surveyor's report, HOA bylaw excerpts, screenshots of her online rental ads, and a cease and desist letter from Derek's firm. She flipped through it, fury draining into disbelief. Guests exchanged nervous glances. A few pulled out their phones to see if their properties had been used in her listings. One board member muttered something about false advertising. Another whispered about insurance liability. Karen, now rattled, demanded an emergency HOA meeting to force removal of the wall. Reluctantly, the board agreed, but it was clear the tide had turned. Tuesday night, I arrived prepared. A slide deck, security footage, renter testimonials, and a timeline of Karen's intimidation and deceit. As I presented, more residents came forward with their own stories. Trespassers picnicking in their yards, strangers knocking on their doors. Karen's rebuttal was a messy soup of buzzwords: synergy, shared assets, community growth. But when asked about undeclared income and rental taxes, she fell silent. The board requested her financial records. The vote to remove her as HOA president? Unanimous. Within days, the HOA issued a new policy affirming every homeowner's right to privacy and forbidding any advertisement of amenities not legally owned. Karen's listings vanished from every rental platform. Guests demanded refunds. The state attorney general's office opened a fraud investigation. 3 months later, while spreading mulch beneath the lilacs, a process server arrived, looking for Karen. She faced multiple lawsuits from angry renters and potential fines nearing $200,000. The last time I saw her, she was loading boxes into a moving truck. A foreclosure notice clung to her front door like a final insult. She caught my eye and hurled one last glare at my glorious wall. I raised my coffee in salute. She replied with a one-finger farewell, and drove out of Pine Ridge for good. That wall still stands, its cedar grain weathered to a silvery gray, a quiet monument to the power of patience, persistence, and knowing the rules better than the bully. And on those still mornings, when steam curls from my mug and the lake reflects the sky like polished pewter, I can almost hear the ghost of that first shriek, fading, like so many other nuisances, into the peace we earn when we finally learn to defend our boundaries. If you enjoyed this tale of neighborly justice and sweet revenge, give this video a like and hit subscribe. There are plenty more stories where karma shows up, armed with bylaws, blueprints, and just the right amount of cedar.